Hi, welcome to Block 4 Operations and Equations with Directed Numbers. Lesson 3. I'll share my screen. So, in your previous lesson, you learned how to order directed numbers, so positive and negative integers on a number line and also using the greater than and less than symbols. Remember, directed numbers are also known as positive and negative integers. Integers mean whole numbers. So, in today's lesson, you're going to learn how to perform calculations that cross zero. So, we say calculations cross zero when you have one calculation where you started with a positive number. Let's say you add another number and you end up with a negative number, or you have a calculation where you started with a negative number and then you add something to it or you subtract something to it and you end up with a positive number. Okay, so that's what we're going to be focusing on in this lesson. But before we start, I want to ask you to like the video, subscribe to the channel, share the video with those you think can benefit, and click on the notification bell so that when new videos are uploaded, you will be notified. All right, before we start, I would like you to do the retrieval practice questions in 3 minutes. So here you ask, assuming you've paused the video and you've answered the questions, here are the answers. So here you were asked to simply work out these calculations. So this shouldn't be a challenge for you to do. Next, you were asked to write the missing labels on the number line. So you can see on this number line, between these values 5 and 20, we have 3 intervals, 1, 2, 3. So it means 20 subtract 5 is 15. So we need to split 15 amongst these 3 intervals. So 15 divided by 3 will give us 5. So each of these interval from here to here will increase by 5. So you can see going that way, it's increasing. So you have 5 here and you have 20 there. So that number becomes 10 and 15. But going that way, it has to be decreasing by 5. Okay, so we'll have 0, -5, and then -10. Next, you were asked 2 temperatures are shown in the table. In which city is it warmer? Now, you can see, looking at the table, you can see that when you consider putting these numbers on a number line or, for example, a thermometer, you can see that the number above has to be greater or warmer than the number below. So Bristol is warmer. Let's do our new learning. If I ask you to work out what this missing number is, what would you think? And what do you consider to be the correct answer? Well, think about this. When we have a number line, if we are adding numbers, we move steps, those number of steps to the right. So it means if we start at -4, because we're adding something to -4, we have to consider how many steps, how many intervals we have to loop over to get to the number 3. So let's do that. And we see that it's 7. Okay. So we have to loop starting from -4. When we add in, we have to move to the right on the number line. We see that we have to do 7 steps to get to 3. Let's look at this one. What do you think if we have to, when we add in numbers, if we move into the right on the number line by those number of steps, what do you think which direction would we be moving to when we subtract? That's right. Someone may have said left. So you're right. So it means we start at 7, we count some number of steps to the left, and then we arrive at -2. So let's check what those number of steps are. We see that it is 9. So that means 7 subtract 9 is -2. All right. Sometimes you could have questions where you can use a number line to do them, but they are written like this. So you've been asked to find the number that is 8 less than 2. So this is how the question is written. Find 8 less than 2. So we use a number line. We start at 2. Remember, less than is the same thing as subtracting. So it means we're going to be going to the left of the number line. So 8 less than 2 will be -6. All right. Let's look at another example. Here, Amir says 6 more than -2 is -8. Do you agree with Amir? Well, let's use our number line to check it. 6 more than, all right, so 6 more than -2 is -8. So we're looking for a number that is 6 more than -2. And when we say more than, it means we're going to be counting steps to the right of the number line. So if we start at -2 and we count 6 more, that takes us to 4. So the answer is 4. So what mistake do you think Amir could have made? So Amir could have used the answer for 6 less than -2 to answer the question. So 6 less than -2 is -8. So Amir may have done that mistake. It's now time for you to practice what you've learned. So pause the video and answer question 1 and 2 in 3 minutes. Assuming you've paused the video and you've answered questions 1 and 2, here are the answers. So here we have, we're told to complete the calculations represented on the number line. So you can see that we're making steps to the right. So you just need to count the number of steps, which is 9. So it has to be -4, add 9 to give you 5. Here you can see we're going to the left. So it means we are subtracting. So it has to be 4 subtract 11 equal to -7. And then here we're asked to fill the missing numbers on the number line. So from 0, you do 8 steps left is -8, 8 steps right is +8. And then here from -2, 8 steps left will take us to -10, and then 8 steps right will take us to +6. Okay, so this is a really important exercise for you to know how directed numbers, positive and negative integers, work on a number line. So mark your work and celebrate your success. If you made mistake, study it again and you would really understand it. Okay, pause the video and answer question 3 in 2 minutes. All right, so how would we answer the question? So here we're asked, Tommy is finding 7 less than 3. 7 less than 3 means you start at 3 and you're going to count 7 steps to the left. So you start at 3, 7 steps to the left takes you to -4. And that's how we'd use a number line to solve the problem. Okay, if we're asked to complete these calculations, how would we do them? So we're now in the second part of the lesson where we are building on our initial understanding of doing calculations where we cross 0. So 8 subtract 3 will be 8. To subtract 3 means you do 3 steps to the left, and that takes you to 5. 3 subtract 8 means you start at 3. You do 8 steps to the left, and that takes you to -5. Have a think at the other two. What do you think the answers would be? All right. So that's right. C, I'm sure someone would have got the answer 5. So negative 3 add 8 means you start at negative 3, you count 8 steps to the right, and that takes you to 5. And then negative 8 add 3 means you start at negative 8, and then you count 3 steps to the right, and that takes you to negative 5. But there is another clever way for us to do calculations like this without doing each of the steps every time. This strategy can help you to do it mentally sometimes. So look at this. Negative 4 add 5. Remember, our title is doing calculations that cross 0. Okay? So from negative 4, how many steps do you have to make to get to 0? Have a think. That's right. Someone would have thought, okay, I need to do 4 steps to the right to get to 0. Well, we were asked to add 5 to negative 4. So we just have one more to use, which means negative 4 add 5 is 1. So that's how you begin to understand these, and then you're able to do your calculations. So instead of doing these jumps that we would normally have done, we know that we can say 5 can be split into 4 and 1, and we know that negative 4 add 4 is 0. So with the 1 left, which we need to count, we'll get 1. So let's use this strategy now instead of counting. So 4 subtract 6. So we know we're going to count to the left because we're subtracting 6. But how many steps do you have to count left to get to 0 from 4? Of course, it is 4. So we'll partition the number to 4 and 2. Okay. So if we did our counting, this is what we'll get. All right. So to get to 0, we have to count 4 steps. And then after 0, we have to count 2 more steps, which will take us to negative 2. So you can see with this strategy, we don't need to be counting those steps, in a crude way. You can actually do this mentally. Oh, you say, okay, 4 subtract 6. 4 subtract 4 is 0. So if I have to subtract another 2, that will be negative 2, right? All right, what about this one? It becomes really useful, that method becomes really useful when we're doing large calculations like this. So think about it. Let's do this together. Negative 13 at 27. You think, okay, negative 13 add 13 will be 0. Okay, what is left if I have taken 13 from 27? You say, oh, it's 14. Oh, that means negative 13 add 27 is 14. So we partition 27 into 13 and 14. We know that negative 13 subtract negative 13 add 13 is 0. And then with the 14 left, remember we're adding, that takes us to 14. So you can see we no longer need to use the number line. We can start working, doing these calculations mentally. This one might look complicated, but it really isn't. So let's do it together. We know that negative 6 add 6 will take us to 0. Well, if we partition 23 into 6, what's left is 17, because 17 add 6 is 23, right? So we know, okay, negative 6 add 23 will take us to 17. Now we say, okay, 17 subtract 37. 17 subtract 17 will obviously be 0, right? And then we know that we have 20 left. So if we do 17 subtract 37, we know our answer will be 20. And that's what is shown in this number line. Okay? So negative 6 add 6 takes us to 0. We have 17 left, which will take us to 17. Now we have to subtract 37. 17 subtract 17 will be 0, will take us back to 0. Now we're left with 27, which will take us to we're left with 20, which will take us to negative 20. All right, here is the last example before you start practicing for the second part of the lesson. The table shows the temperatures in 3 cities at midnight. The temperature in London drops by 6 degrees. What is the new temperature? So words like this, drop less, will tell you that you're subtracting or counting to the left, or if you have a temperature scale like this, you're counting down. So from 2 degrees in London, if we count 6 steps down, that will take us to -4, right? Let's look at another question. The temperature in Moscow at 8 a.m. is 1 degree Celsius. By how many degrees Celsius has the temperature increased? So in Moscow, it was -6 degrees, but now we're being told that it has risen to 1 degrees. So we have to start from -6 and see how many intervals or steps we have to take to get to 1 degrees. And that is 7. Okay, the temperature has increased by 7 degrees Celsius. It's now time for you to practice what you've learned. So far you have learned that one strategy that you can use to work with directed numbers, that's positive and negative integers, is by thinking about partitioning the number that you want to add or subtract from your directed number, from your number, whether it's positive or negative. So by mentally doing that, you're thinking, remember, the title is to cross 0. So you're thinking, what is the first thing I need to do to get the calculation to be 0? And then what's left? Okay. So that will give me the number of steps I need to take to get to the position of the correct number. Pause the video and answer questions 4 and 5 in 3 minutes. Assuming you've paused the video and you've answered the questions, here are the answers. So here you simply ask to complete these calculations. So using that mental method, you will notice that you don't even need to use the number line. Okay? So 7 subtract 5 is 2, 5 subtract 7. You say, okay, I'm subtracting 7. This calculation looks like I'm going to cross 0 because I'm subtracting 7 from a smaller number, right? 5. So 5 subtract. So 5 subtract 5 is 0. Okay. And then you think, okay, I'm going to have to cross 0 here. So my answer will be -2. And that's what you get for these calculations. So mark your work and celebrate your success. All right, here, questions 6 and 7. Pause the video and answer questions 6 and 7 in 3 minutes. All right, Teddy is working out. Let's look at the answer, assuming you've paused the video and answered the questions. Teddy is working out the answer to 2 less than -3. The answer is -1. He says, what mistake has Teddy made? All right, so the mistake Teddy has made, the answer is actually -5. So 2 less than -3. So if we start at -3, 2 less means we have to do 2 steps to the left. Now, if we take from -3, 1 step will take us to -4. The next step will take us to -5. So the mistake Teddy has made could have been Teddy doing the calculation as if it were an addition. All right. All right. Question 7. Here you're given a table and you ask to use the table to answer this question. The temperature in Moscow rises by 8 degrees Celsius by 12 noon. What is the temperature at 12 noon? So we know the temperature at Moscow was already -15. All right. If it rises by 8 degrees, it will take us to -7. Okay. All right. Pause the video and answer questions 8 and 9 in 3 minutes. Assuming you've paused the video and you've answered questions 8 and 9, here are the answers. Let's discuss them. So here, question 8, you will ask to find the difference between A and B. So look, we know that between 0 and 6, we have 2 intervals. So it means we have to do 6 divided by 2, which is 3. So each interval is 3, right? So if each interval is 3, that has to be 3. Okay, so let me do some writing. So that has to be 3. Okay, it's going up in 3 every time. You can see the number is going up this way because here is 0 and here is 6. So that has to be 9, that has to be 12, and that has to be 15, right? So that has to be negative 3, that has to be negative 6. Okay, they're asking us, we should find the difference between A and B. So A here has to be 18, and here is going to have to be negative 9. All right, so the difference between negative 9 and 18 is 27. All right. So difference means to subtract, okay? Or they're asking you how many steps you have to take to get to 18. So how do we do that really quickly? You think, okay, how do I get from negative 9 to 0? Remember that mental strategy we talked about? So negative 9 to 0 is 9, okay? And we have 18. We know to get from 0 to 18 is 18. So 9 plus 18 will give us 27. Okay. Next one, we're told find the missing terms in the linear sequence. Linear sequence means the numbers will either be increasing or decreasing by the same amount. So here we can see that the number is increasing by 3 every time. Okay. Because negative 10 to negative 7, you need to have 3 steps on a number line. Negative 4, if you add 3 to negative 4, that will take you to negative 1. Here we can see that the number is decreasing by 7, all right, because the difference between 9 and 2 is 7. Here you can see the difference between negative 19 and negative 24 is negative 5. So you're decreasing by 5 every time, okay? And you can see that here. Here, you've not been given, this one is a bit challenging, but remember, we can still use our knowledge of intervals to solve this problem. So here we have negative 5. Imagine this, we had a number line, okay? Imagine we have a number line, and we have a number there, and we have a number there. So the difference between negative 2 and negative 0.5, so if you think about it, negative 2 to negative 1 is 1. And then negative 1 to negative 0.5 is 0.5. So we have 1.5, right? We have 1.5 from here to here. Now, imagine that this was another point right here. This was another point right here where we have to write numbers. Okay, imagine that we're trying to form a number line to figure out what these numbers would be. But first, we need to know the interval. So we have 1, 2, 3. So we have 3 intervals. And within these 3 intervals, we know that the difference between the extremes, negative 2 and negative 0.5 is 1.5. So we need to divide 1.5 by 3. Okay. Remember what we did with decimal division. So I'm not going to go into detail about how this is done, but your answer will be 0.5. So you can go and watch our former videos of how we do this to get 0.5. So it means each of these interval is changing. It's going to change by 0.5. We're going to be adding 0.5. How do we know we're adding? Because we have negative 2 on the left-hand side and we have negative 0.5 on the right-hand side. So the number is increasing in that direction, going to the right. So negative 2 add 0.5 will be negative 1.5. Negative 1.5 add 0.5 will be negative 1. And that's how we get our answers. And then you can see we can use the same idea to complete the others. Pause the video and answer questions 10 and 11 in 4 minutes. Assuming you've paused the video and you've answered the questions, here are the answers. So here you are applying what you know about directed numbers, but this time you're applying it in algebra, and you can see it works. Okay, once you understand how to work with numbers, the algebra bit is just letters in front of them. It's nothing. We could just remove these letters in front of the numbers. You would still be able to do these calculations. All right, they're exactly the same thing. So you collect like terms, you know how to collect like terms. We've done that already. And then you get your answers. This one, you were asked 4 numbers are put in ascending order. The difference between the largest and smallest number is 11. The total number of the 4 cards is 10. Find the 3 missing numbers. So the 3 missing numbers has to be -3, 1, and 4. I don't want to go into detail explaining how this works because I don't want the video to be too long than it should be. Okay? And that brings us to the end of our lesson. So what we've learned so far is, just to summarize, a very important strategy that we have learned in this lesson is how to mentally do calculations that would mean you cross 0 in that calculation. So for example, if you're given -7 add 11, the very first thing you think about is, I need to add 11 to -7. I'm definitely going to cross 0. So what takes me to 0? It's -7 add 7. You now think, okay, but what is left from the 11 I was asked to add to the -7? You say, right, it has to be 4. So -7 add 11 is 4. Well done for sticking around and for learning directed numbers, positive and negative integers, which can be a real challenge, but you have stuck around and you have taken your learning seriously. Until next time, take really good care of yourself, and bye-bye.